Hello once again, this is Jeff Scott, your instructor for the online version of 152-157, Website Development XHTML CSS for the Fall 2015 semester at Blackhawk Technical College. I put a file out here that explains that I've decided not to do for Chapter 7, not to do anything to the Trump website. So there's, out of the 14 chapters in the book, there will be 4 chapters. Chapter 1 and 7, which I'm not going to do any website work on. Chapter 10, which is on website promotion. And Chapter 13, which is on meta tags. So there should be, when I get all the way done with this, in the class website folder, there should be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know where I put 8, but I have been doing work on it. Well, I've got that in there as 6. That was page layout, so I must have combined 6 and 8 together, so I'll have to pull those out. Not a problem. All right, but there'll be about 10 folders worth of stuff in there. So let's go into Chapter 9. Chapter 9 is entitled just simply Forms. What I'm going to do to try to hopefully at least make this a little easier to understand is I'm going to create a simple form and then add a few things to it as we move on. I suppose when we get done, by the time we finish, it'll be a pretty big form. So we'll talk about the uses of forms on web pages. We'll create a simple form, use CSS to style the form, and then talk about some other things and how forms will actually lead into classes after this class. All right? So, forms are used all over the web for all sorts of reasons. Search forms, order forms, etc. When you go into Google, you're using a form. As it says here, a form is an HTML element that contains and organizes it. So it's a container. Forms contain things like text boxes, check boxes, buttons, and there's other things as well. Now, one thing about forms, typically form is something that's done on the client side, but when you click a submit button and you've submitted the form correctly, it goes over to a server side where something is going to happen. It's going to take your information from a website and allow you to buy a product. It's going to take the information that you've added and put you into a database of registered users, something along those lines. So here's an example of some of the tabs that you can have inside of a form. So rather than spending a lot of time going over that example, let's go and build the example that they have in Figure 9.2. I don't know if it's shown in here or not. Got to join our newsletter. Maybe they already showed that one. That one. So let's go build this one. And I'm not going to use, I have no idea if it's available in the book. I really don't care. I'm just going to build it myself. So it should look at least pretty similar to what you see in Figure 9.2 on the bottom of page 384. So I'm going to come in and, as we always do, start with our Doctype tag. And I'm just going to fill in all of my tags here. If it's a little noisy in the background, I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm taping this at home, and the washer and the dryer are going. I've got the door shut, but it might still be a little loud. So this is a shipping address entry, and that's also going to be our H1 header that we'll put in just a minute. That was right there. So the first thing I'm going to add here is, it looks like I'm going to make it about an H2 that's called shipping address entry. All right, so we're going to have more stuff in here in just a minute, but for now, let's end our body tag and let's end our HTML tag. All right, so that's all we've got in there so far. So right now, it's sure not going to look like much. So on the desktop here, I'm just going to type in, I don't know if I already have, index.html. Let's call it form.html, because I shouldn't have anything that's called that. All right, so there it is. Right now, when I go and run this, all you'll see is the H2 tag. Okay? All right, so let's start putting things in here. When we start to build this, we're not going to put any CSS in here. So it's going to look fairly ugly. It won't look nearly as nice as it does in the book. And that's okay. So for right now, I'm just going to put in beginning and ending form tags. If I went and saved this and ran it, it wouldn't look any different than it does right now. All right, so I'm going to put a label in here. Whoops, try that again. 4 equals name. All right, and it's going to say name with a colon. Okay? All right. Input type equals text. Name equals name, which looks a little goofy. ID equals name. Value, no, we don't need anything. I'm gonna put some stuff that's not really shown in the book. Placeholder equals enter name here. All right, and that should be it. I don't think it needs any more than that. So let's look at that and see how it looks so far. Okay, so there's the beginning of our form. All right, you can say, well, yeah, there's a lot more space. Yeah, and it's going to look kind of ugly for now. Don't let that bother you, please. Not at all. We'll use some CSS on this later, and we'll add a bunch of other stuff and pretty it up, so to speak. So we need company, address 1, address 2, city, state, zip, country. All right. Right now, if I were to do this, it's going to look pretty goofy. Okay. So boom, it looks pretty bad. So we're going to put the minimum of stuff in here that we have to put in there. So after enter your name here, I am going to put a BR tag. So I'm going to put a BR tag at the end of each one of these. In fact, I'm going to put 2 of them there. All right. So we've got our name, and the next thing says company. So we have to change all of these to company. So enter company name here. Okay. And if you see, after we've done this, it's going to start to look a little bit better than it did. All right, so there, notice that. Boom. Still looks kind of icky, for lack of better words. And in fact, let's come over here where we've got our BR tags. Let's put 2 BR tags on the end of each line. I think that'll make it look even a little bit better. And 3 here. All right, so I'm just going to put the rest of these in here. So address line 1. We'll call it address 1. And this will say enter main address here. And then this next one will be address line 2. Looks like there's a blank space there. And that'll be address 2. All right, and this will say enter secondary address here. All right, so we've got that. Now we need city. And again, city. Now the next one will look a little different because this one will say state. All right. But what we're going to want to put in there in just a second is we're going to want to put a drop-down list. So we're not going to want to use the input. Let's take a look and admire what we've done so far. All right. Again, the spacing and stuff isn't there, but don't let that bother you. Looks like I didn't put a double BR after name, so, but the rest of it's coming together a little bit. Let's take a look at that. There's the other line break after name. All right, now I'm going to cheat a little bit here for lack of better words. And in my cheating, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to Google, and I'm going to type in here drop-down list of US states, because somebody else has already created this. So US list HTML free formatter. So that's what I want to do. That's exactly what I want. That's right here. All right, because rather than me having to type this in and type in all 50 states, I'm letting somebody else who's already done it put it in there for me. So we've got state, and I want to remove this now where it says input and all this placeholder stuff. All that can leave. All right, and I'm going to replace that with this. Okay, so let me again, the time to go, if you've got to pretty this stuff up, so to speak, a little bit, the time to do it is when you are creating it. Don't think, well, I'll go back and do it later. Most people don't go back and do it later. They just leave it the way it is. And remember, not only when you're creating HTML like this are you doing it for you, but you're also doing it for anybody who might end up maintaining whatever it is you're working on for you at a later time. And what's this taking me as I'm explaining it to you? A minute? If it's more than that, it's probably not too much more. Got about 4 or 5 states to go. All right. And that looks pretty good. So let's take a look at our work now. All right, so there's the states, and notice they're all filled in. We've even got the District of Columbia in there. We could remove that if we wanted to. All right, so the only thing that's left, so we've got name, company, address line 1, address line 2, city, and we've got state. So what's left is zip code and country. All right, now the zip code is going to be a little bit different because it's actually two different things. So in other words, label, and we'll call this zip code. And I actually don't like the way the author did this. I don't normally see it like this. So I'm going to put in here zip code. And rather than showing it the way the author did, I'm going to just have one box. All right, and we'll handle that when we get going a little further. So this is zip, and enter zip code here. All right, and the last thing is country. And in fact, I don't want that either. I want another drop-down list. And we did this one with states. Let's see if there's a drop-down list of countries. In HTML looks like it would be good. ISO country list. So we've got that. All right. So I'm going to come in here and grab this just like I did earlier. Wow, that's a big list. But it looks complete. So copy. Let's go back into here. In fact, before we do this, I might be able to make this a little easier on myself. So I'm going to come in a notepad here. Paste it in. You see it. Those are all the countries. Hoping that's a couple tabs. And I'm trying to make it double the number of tabs, so replace all. Now I may have made it worse, I don't know, but that's okay. I've got all that stuff in there. The only thing I have to change is down at the very bottom. I'm going to move that over one. A, Control A, come on. Why is it not doing that? Edit, select all, Control copy. Now I'm going to come back into here and I'm going to paste that in right there. Like I said, this is a big country list. All right, and I don't know if I tabbed it over enough times or not. I did not. So each one of these should be tabbed over one more time. Again, how can I ask you to do something as far as cleaning up stuff, etc., if I'm not willing to do it myself? So you get to spend now about 2 or 3 minutes watching me hit the tab key. There's probably a faster way to do this, but this is fine. Now some of these may look funky in here with like these special characters and the like. I'm not even going to worry about that. That's something, if I was doing this professionally as opposed to trying to demo it for you in a class, I would definitely go back and look at each one of these. So if you ever do something like I'm doing right now, where you grab something that supposedly is available for everybody to use, but to use, you're grabbing something from the net, always look at that stuff. And make sure that what you put in is indeed what you wanted to put in. Well, I'm up to the G's. To the S's. So we're making headway. If I did goof this up and it's not lined up correctly, I'm not going to go back and change it again, just because I don't want to waste any more of our time during this lesson, as I said, with you watching me hit the tab key. But still, all told, I'm just about finished with this. And oh, I got like 5 more. All right. Okay, so that's it. Again, that should have all been moved over, but it's okay. It really is. So let's save this. Let's run it again. All right, so there's my country code. And you can see just how many countries I have in here. All right, so what's left? Well, we've got a continue and a clear all button. When I get done with this, what I'm going to do is try to explain to you kind of what's been going on here and go over some of the major things that are in this form. All right, so that's a select. Whoops, not there, sorry. Input type equal, we've got to continue and a clear all, so I'm going to call that'll be submit. Input type equals submit. Value equals continue, it looks like it says. So we've got that, and let's put a couple blank spaces. And I'm going to copy that line. And this second one should have been inside of double quotes. So this will be type equal reset, and its value will be clear all. All right. Let's look at it one more time. So you can now see, whoop, I need more carriage returns there, but you get the idea, hopefully, of what's going on. All right. So let me go back after this select here. All right, so there's our form. Again, not nearly as pretty as what's in here, as what's in the book here in Figure 9.2 on page 384. But we didn't spend a lot of time. Okay, I'm 21 minutes in, so I guess enough time, about 20 minutes to build that. So I want to explain this, explain the elements that are in here, and then we'll pick it up again in the next lesson. All right? So, taking it from the top, and when I say the top, this is our form. Okay, so our form starts there with that beginning form tag, and it ends down there with our ending form tag. Okay, that should be pretty obvious to everybody who looks at it. This right here, you'll notice that in each one of these cases, up until we get to the state right there, all right, we've got a label. And the recommendation is that if you're going to put in a label, you use the for attribute, because that equates that name right there with the actual input of the same name. Okay, so this right here that you see that's in gray, that line allowed that to be made. It says name. All right, then we've got the box here, and the box has got a little lightish gray writing in it. That's called a placeholder. Notice as soon as I start typing, the stuff that's in there goes away. All right. Now, one thing that I'm doing in here that probably is over and above what your author is telling you to do, this line here is the text box for the name. All right, so it's a text box, so it's an input element. Its type is text. Its name, physical name, is name. And also notice it's got an ID. So I'm having you set both a name and an ID. And the reason for that is that ID value, we're going to start using that in Chapter 14 when we talk about JavaScript. I want you to get used to also putting a name equals, because in your third semester you take 152-148, which is relational database coding. It's a PHP class, and PHP uses that name attribute. All right, so you can see all the good stuff, so to speak, that we put in here. All right. Now, when we get down to this, label, state, this, as you'd probably guess right here, what's in there is holding all those values that you see inside of here. Now, an important thing to realize is notice what we're saying here. Value equals, and then Alabama. Notice it's AL, which is the abbreviation for Alabama, then the word Alabama. All right. Sometimes what you'll see in here is for the first option, it'll say something like this. Option, value equals, double quote, and then it'll say, please enter a state. And the reason for sometimes doing that is, notice now the state is set to Alabama, but notice now it's set to please enter a state. Because what a lot of people do is they just leave it at Alabama. All right, so right now I can go and put in my information. So Jeff Scott, Blackhawk, Technical College, all right, 6004 South County Road G, P.O. Box, I think it's 5009 or something like that. Janesville, Wisconsin, 53547. Country. Notice if I put a U in there, it goes down to the U's, so that isn't bad. Now it's easier for me to check. So United States, if I click continue, it removed that stuff, but nothing happened. Not true. Notice it saved all this stuff for me. Name equals Jeff plus Scott. Company equals Blackhawk plus Technical plus College, etc. So it is saving all that. And this, what you see up here, everything after the question mark that's got all the information, just remember this term. That's known as the query string. All right? If I put in the same information, just filling it up again, I typed in there UN, so now I'm real close. 2 down. Now notice you already saw what happened when I click continue, but if I click clear all, it clears everything out, except for what I put in here for my defaults. Now notice I've got Afghanistan. I can do the same kind of thing I did up here. In other words, I can come here and I can add, instead of please enter a state, I can say please enter a country. All right, and oftentimes you see when you're creating forms, they look like that. Okay? All right, so what I've done very, very quickly is created the form for you and walked you through some of the main elements. I guess the last thing I should mention to you first quick is I did all these up here were input type equals text, way up there. Come on. See that input type equal text because those were text boxes. Down at the bottom, I'm saying input type equals submit, which that's a special button. And input type equal reset, and that's a special button. Don't need blank spaces after that clear all. That doesn't really make any sense. So right now, without any formatting, here's our form. All right, so I want to take that form eventually and make it look like the one that's in figure 9.2. I'm going to stop right now, and when I come back, I'm going to end up going over the form element and the other stuff starting on page 385 in your textbook.